पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 Hare. Yes, anyone remembers what we discussed in last session? Someone who would like to summarize?
Prabhuji, we had seen that it's necessary to control all our senses in order to progress in Krishna consciousness, because even if one of the senses is not controlled, it can nullify all other advantages.
Correct. Yes. So how to control those senses?
To employ them in the service of Bhagavan Krishna.
Yes. By engaging them in service of Krishna. So we covered from verse number 64 to 67. Some 4 verses we covered. So Krishna was telling, by practicing regulated principle of freedom, by practicing sadhana bhakti, one can easily control the senses. And by controlling such senses, what happens? Intelligence becomes steady. And when intelligence is steady, one can be peaceful. And when there is a peace, there is a happiness. So this is what Krishna was telling in the previous part or section of this Bhagavad Gita. So basically, this is the answer of Arjuna's question. What was Arjuna's question? How does he engage his senses in the service of the Lord? How does he engage? Sthita Prajna. He was asking about symptoms of a Sthita Prajna. Who is a Sthita Prajna? A person who is situated in the divine consciousness is known as Sthita Prajna. So Arjuna was asking the symptoms of such a person. So later on, Krishna, he gave an example, an analogy, how a boat is carried by a strong wind on the surface of water. Same way, these senses are so strong that it may carry away even a person who has a steady intelligence. It may carry away such person also. So Krishna is basically giving a warning for all of us to be very careful with the senses, especially those who are practicing bhakti yoga or who are practicing any kind of yoga or spirituality. They should be careful with the senses. And that is the first step of a spiritual life, is to control the senses. Now further we'll move verse number 68. Start with this verse today. So all of you please join chanting this shloka. Tasmad yasa mahabaho nigrihitani sarvasah indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya prajna pratishtita. Anyone would like to chant this shloka?
Yes. Tasmajjasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvasa indriyani indriyarthebhyo tasya prajna pratisthita.
Wonderful. Anyone else?
जी प्रभु जी. तस्मात् यस्य महाबाहो निगृहीतानि सर्वशः इंद्रियाणि इंद्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
Wonderful. Is someone else would like to try?
Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvasya indriyani indriyatebhyas tasya prajna pratisthita.
Yes, someone else? Okay, so we'll start with translation. Therefore, O mighty armed one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. So Krishna is telling ones whose senses are restrained from the sense objects is certainly of steady intelligence. Such a person is pragna. Such a person is properly situated. Pragna pratishtita. Pratishtita means situated. He is firmly situated. Such person is firmly situated. We'll read the purport. As enemies are curbed by superior force, similarly, the senses can be curbed not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in the intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called sadhaka, or a suitable candidate for liberation. So, pragna, who is pragna? Sthita pragna, a person who is situated in divine consciousness. Now, how such consciousness can be attained? This consciousness can be attained simply by engaging in the service of the Lord. Simply by engaging the senses in the service of the Lord. So that is what Sthita Pragna does. Right? A person who is situated in divine consciousness, he engages his senses in the service of the Lord. But we are not Sthita Pragna. We all are not Sthita Pragna. So how we can come to that level of Sthita Pragna? How we can attain that divine consciousness? This is what Prabhupada is mentioning here. What he is saying? One should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. One should practice what kind of art? Art to control the senses, control the mind. How? By engaging them in Krishna consciousness. When someone controls his mind and senses by engaging them in the Krishna consciousness, under the guidance of bona fide spiritual master, such person is sadhaka. By principles of sadhana bhakti, when he controls his senses and mind, gradually he will come to that level of sthita pragna. He will attain that level of sthita pragna. So when one is situated, or when one is practicing bhakti yoga under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, so what happens? That spiritual master's duty is to guide that disciple, to guide that shishya in such a way that he attains perfection in his life. And what we understand by bona fide spiritual master? Bona fide spiritual master is the one who has been authorized by his own spiritual master. Who has been authorized by his own spiritual master to initiate further disciples, or who comes in the disciplic succession. There are 4 disciplic successions. Krishna explains in Padma Purana. What are those 4 disciplic succession? Anyone remembers?
One is the Gaudiya Vaishnav Sampradaya.
Yes.
One is Sri Sampradaya of Lakshmi ji.
Yes.
One is Rudra Sampradaya.
Correct.
And one is, I think, there is a 4th one. I don't know.
Anyone else?
Brahma Sampradaya.
And this Ramanuj Sampradaya.
No, Ramanujancharya comes in that Sri Sampradaya only.
Okay. Nimbark, yes.
Yes, Nimbarka Sampradaya. So these are the 4 Sampradayas which are authorized by Krishna himself, under which if anyone comes and take the knowledge, this transcendental knowledge, he can attain the perfection of his life. Now, the problem is, everyone wants peace in their life. Everyone wants his life to be peaceful, full of happiness. But we see nowadays people are struggling very hard to attain this peace. To attain that peace, they are struggling very hard. Why they are struggling very hard? Because they want peace in their life. They want happiness in their life. But they are not ready to control their senses. They are not ready to restrain their senses. Okay, my tongue is demanding something. Let me eat all those stuffs. Even such stuffs which are not prescribed by the Shastras, like eating non-veg or eating some abominable food. Or today I want to see something good. Let me go and watch some movie. In these ways, we are always trying to satisfy our senses, but we see senses are not satisfied. Senses are not satisfied because we are not restraining or we are not engaging senses in a proper way. So there cannot be peace. Just like in a car, gearbox is there. If those gears are not properly aligned, you cannot drive the vehicle properly, or you cannot drive the vehicle smoothly, or probably vehicle will not start itself. Vehicle will not start because gears are not aligned properly. Same way, this human life is given for what purpose? Is given for the purpose to attain salvation, to come out of this cycle of birth and death. And how one can come out of the cycle of birth and death? By controlling the senses, by engaging or by practicing bhakti yoga. But what happens when we don't follow? We may again enter into the same cycle. Just like a doctor is there. Doctor gives the medicine to the patient and he prescribes some diet. You should take such food only. Just like in case of jaundice or in some other cases, food is very much, diets matters a lot. But that patient is not following the diet. He is taking whatever he wants. So what he is doing? He is making his life even more complicated. Same way, Shastra says this life is meant for what purpose? To make a spiritual advancement. To make a spiritual advancement. But when we engage in sense gratification, we lose the purpose itself. Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, Ahar Nidra Bhay Maithunam Cha. Ahar Nidra Bhay Maithunam Cha. Etat Purusha. Ahar Nidra Bhay Maithunam Cha. Samanyam Etat Purushu Naranam. Dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesha. Dharma hina pashubi samana. Ahar Nidra Bhay Maithunam Cha. These four things. Ahar means eating. Nidra means sleeping. Bhaya means fear or defend. Maithunam means mating. Ahar Nidra Bhay Maithunam Cha. Samanyam etat Pashubhi Naranam. Samanya means same activity animals and humans are doing. Just like animal, they also eat, we also eat. They also sleep, we also sleep. They also defend, just like a dog. If you see how dog defends, dog pass the urine to mark his territory, and somebody comes into his territory, he immediately run behind that dog. He chases that dog till the time he makes him move out of his own territory. Mathnam, they are also mating. Humans also mate. We are only difference is we are doing all these activity in a civilized way. We are doing all these activities in a civilized way. Whereas animals, they do in the street, they eat in the street, we eat properly, sit on the table, chair, and then we eat. So we are doing all these things in a civilized way. But Shastra says both activities are same. So there is no difference. What is the difference between human and animals? Further, this verse says, Dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesha. Adhika means there is something which is extra, vishesha, which is very special or which is very extra. What is that? Dharmo hi tesham. Follow the religion principles to make spiritual advancement is adhika vishesha. That is something very special and that is extra, which is only available for Nirnam. Nirnam means human beings. But suppose that dharma is not there. Further it says dharmena hina. Hina means if dharma is not there, then that person is pashubhi samana. That person is as good as animal. Only difference is dvipada. Only difference is he is a dvipada animal. Another animal is chaturapada animal. He has 4 legs and we have 2 legs. That is the only difference. There is no more difference. Because he is also doing the same activities, we are also doing the same activities. There is no such difference. There is no such difference. So what difference this human life has is to make spiritual advancement, to follow the religious principles which help us to make spiritual advancement. That is the advantage we all have got. And when we practice such regulations of freedom, we can come out of this bondage. Okay, we'll read further. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami yasyan jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munihi. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-control. And the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective sage. So here Krishna is telling that night for all beings, sarva bhutanam, yanisha, means what is night for all the living entities, all the people, is the time of awakening for the self-control. Person who is self-controller, a sage or sthita prajna. But the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective sage. Whereas when people gets awake, for sage, introspective sage, it is a night. So we'll try to understand. There are 2 things Krishna is making those points here. First is very grossly we can understand is just like we see, especially in Delhi NCR and all, we see metro cities, we see that people, they go to sleep 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or sometimes even 1 o'clock in the night. Especially youth, youngsters, those who are studying, like when I was studying in the college, normal time for us to go to sleep is around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock is the normal time. 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock if we are going to bed, it means we are little delay. Today we got late in going to bed. If it is 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning we go to bed, it is like today we have delayed a lot And sometimes even 5 or 6 o'clock means today we have not slept, we have skipped our sleeping. Whereas for a saintly person, for a sage, it is a time to get up. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, Brahma Muhurta is the time for him to get up and perform his morning rituals. Make spiritual advancement. He performs his morning rituals, chanting the holy name of the Lord, dancing in front of the Lord, offering his prayers, offering arti, all that he does. Whereas a person in general, he goes to sleep at that time. He sleeps late, and that time that introspective sage gets up. And when introspective sage go to sleep, when he goes to sleep, he goes early, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the night, he goes to his bed. That time for them it is party time. Now time starts. For people in general, now time has started. Let us go to pub, let us go to bar, let us do some party, let us go to some restaurant. All that way they perform some acts. This is the very gross way of understanding this loka. Whereas one more point, Krishna, which is he is actually mentioning in this verse, we'll try to understand by reading this purport. There are two classes of intelligent men. The one is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of introspective sage or thoughtful man are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of the materialistic man. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of various sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reaction. So first of all, we try to understand what is introspective sage. What is this introspective sage? Introspective sage is the one who is independent, thoughtful person. Means he observes his activity, he observes his own self, his activities, his desires, his thoughts, his surroundings, and he starts aligning himself with the absolute truth, with the knowledge of absolute truth. So he, unbiased way, he always, guiding himself. He is guiding himself, he is observing all his desires, thoughts in such a way that today I am standing here, I have to go to that particular point. So how and what all way I can reach there? So he is always, unbiased way he is judging himself and making his spiritual advancement. Making his spiritual advancement. That is a introspective sage. Now, there are two, Prabhupada says there are two classes of intelligent men. One is this introspective sage, another is the person who is engaged in materialistic activities. Now, a person who is engaged in the material activities is completely 180 degree from this introspective sage. They are opposite to each other. They are opposite to each other. This introspective sage engages himself in the spiritual activities for the transcendental pleasure of the Lord. He serves the Lord. He engages everything, all the resources in the service of the Lord. Suppose today he have something, some mobile, suppose this gadget, mobile phone or some device he is having, he will engage that device or that mobile phone in the service of the Lord. Whereas a materialistic person, whatever he has, he uses to exploit for his own sense enjoyment. I want to enjoy my senses. I want to satisfy my senses for his own satisfaction. He exploit all those resources. Even to the extent he will not leave even God. He will not leave even Krishna. He will exploit even Lord. How? He will go to the Lord and ask, give me this, give me my daily bread, give me some bungalow, give me some car, give me this position, give me that position. Every time he is thinking of his own self-interest. How I can gratify more and more, how I can satisfy my senses. So what happens when he is trying to satisfy his senses? Sometimes he is happy, sometimes he is feeling that pleasure, and sometimes he is lamenting. Sometimes he is disturbed, he is lamenting that my desire is not getting fulfilled. He is lamenting. Whereas a devotee is completely satisfied by serving Krishna. He is completely satisfied and he takes pleasure in serving the Lord. Even he feels it is more pleasurable. Once Krishna, devotees of Krishna, they were feeling a lot of pleasure in serving Krishna. So Krishna thought, what is there in my service? What is there in doing my seva? That my devotees, they are always feeling that pleasure. They are even more happy than me. So Krishna himself, to experience that pleasure, to experience that happiness, he himself took an incarnation as a devotee. He came as a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a devotee, to experience what kind of pleasure my devotees are experiencing, why they are more happy, more satisfied than me. So Krishna, he came as a Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to experience that pleasure. So now what happens? These materialistic persons, they think that this person, this devotee, is wasting his life. He is wasting his life. Just like many times, some people, they ask me that such a young age, you have become a devotee. You have not even seen the life. You have not even enjoyed the life. You have not even experienced what life is. You are wasting your time. Like that, people, they say. Whereas what we think is, oh, you are engaging in all sense gratification activities. You are completely wasting your life. You are committing spiritual suicide. You are committing spiritual suicide. So devotees see that this materialistic person is wasting his life. This materialistic person sees devotee wasting in the life. So both are opposite to each other. Night for the self-controlled one or the devotee is the day for materialistic person, or day for the materialistic person is the night of a devotee. So like that, there is always opposite directions, you can say, a devotee or materialistic person's work. Whereas Srimad Bhagavatam says, if our actions, our duties are not awakening love for the Godhead or attachment towards this transcendental knowledge, towards the knowledge of this Bhagavad Gita, towards the knowledge of Krishna, or we are not developing that interest to hear about Krishna Katha. So it is like Shrama Evi Kevalam. It is just uselessly we are working, we are doing hard labor, but we are uselessly working. We are working very uselessly. So that's why a devotee, he is always taking pleasure. How? By serving the Lord. He is completely satisfied. And by serving the Lord, what happens? For the next verse says, or here Prabhupada also says, the introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He is not at all afflicted by material happiness and distress. A devotee is not at all afflicted by material happiness and distress. And he is also undisturbed by material reaction. Very important thing we can understand here is, he is undisturbed by material reaction. Means material reactions will be there. Material reactions will be there. Suffering, all these things will be there. But he will not get affected. Just like the devotee may fall sick, but he will not get much affected. He will not get affected. All those material reactions will be there, but he will remain undisturbed. And he will keep on progressing on the path of spirituality or in Krishna consciousness. We'll read the next verse. Apuryamāṇānaṁ acala pratishtam samudram apapravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishyanti sarve sa shantim apnoti na kamakami. Translation: a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still and alone achieve peace. Not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Very nice example or analogy Krishna is giving here. Just like a big ocean is there. Ocean is very deep and holds a lot of water. This ocean is not at all disturbed with the rivers that enters into the ocean. Rivers we see during rainy season full with water. Even sometimes it floods some places. But such rivers, when enters into the ocean is undisturbed. Ocean is completely undisturbed. Not like ocean's level is increasing, all that. No, it is completely undisturbed. Same way, Krishna is telling, a person who is sthita prajna, a person who is a devotee, such person, even though so many desires are there, so many desires comes, but he is not disturbed by such incessant flow of desires. He is not disturbed. And also, such person is not striving to satisfy such desires. He will get a lot of material desires. That is very natural, because as long as this body is there, all these desires are very natural. This jiva, living entity, has a one propensity to desire. So, till the time we are in this material body, in this material creation, we will get material desires also. But he is completely undisturbed. He is not striving, he is not making effort to satisfy such desires. We'll read the purport. Although the vast ocean is filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But ocean remains the same steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna conscious man, is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfilled all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the water of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna conscious man who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification. Although the desires are present, because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruity workers, the self-vanished, and also the yogis who are after mystic yoga powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desire to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna has no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. So here, very nicely Prabhupada has mentioned a lot of points that how even river is full of water, ocean remains steady. It is not at all disturbed or agitated. Same way, devotees, they are fully absorbed. They are completely satisfied. How they are satisfied? By serving Krishna, they are experiencing that transcendental pleasure. That anubhav of what they are getting, the pleasure they are getting, always they are satisfied. So even though they get the desires, material desires, or desires for sense gratification, they are not at all disturbed because of their fullness. And how that fullness comes? Because they are engaging themselves in Krishna's service. And whenever they get desires also, Krishna fulfills their desires. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paripasate tesham nitya abhiyuktanam yugakshemam mahamyam. My devotees, they are always thinking, Ananyas chintayan. Chintan means always thinking of me. Always when they are thinking of me and serving me with love and devotion, to them I provide whatever they lack and I preserve whatever they have. So Krishna, he personally fulfills the desire of his devotees. But devotees, they don't get disturbed by such desires and they are completely satisfied. Even though they may get desire, Krishna will fulfill all those desires. Krishna will fulfill all those desires. Whereas a person is not in Krishna consciousness, he get those desires and he work hard day and night. Incessantly he is working to fulfill those desires. And one after another, there is another desire, another desire, another desire. Like this, there is a chain reaction. And he thinks that this desire will give me happiness, this desire will give me peace and joy. I will be happy and satisfied by fulfilling this desire. But the end, what happens? He is completely disturbed. He is not at all happy and satisfied. Some little pleasure he will get, dry pleasure he will get. And like this, he is just working hard day and night and wasting the human form of life. Just like animals, even animals, they are getting their maintenance. Krishna is providing their maintenance, their food, everything, they are taken care. But to get the same food and all, we work day and night very hard. Krishna is maintaining all those living entities, all those animals. But we want to satisfy more and more desire. We want to exploit more and more. Therefore, there is always disturbance in the life. Even Prabhupada mentions the fruitive workers, the salvinists and the yogis, they desire all these things. They are also not happy because their desires are unfulfilled. Whereas Krishna conscious person is happy in the service of the Lord. He has no more desires. Even what to speak of material desires, he don't have even desire for liberation. He is always happy. When he preaches, engages himself in preaching the message of the Lord, gives him a lot of happiness. Gives him a lot of happiness. We'll move to next verse. Vihaya kaman yaha sarvan pumsa charati nisparaha nirmamo nirahankara sashantim adhigacchati. Translation: a person who has given up all the desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So three things Krishna is mentioning here. Who lives free from desire, nisparaha, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, nirmamo, and is devoid of false ego, nirahankara. So three things Krishna is mentioning. First is nispara, free from desires. Second is nirmamo, free from all sense of proprietorship. And third is nirahankara, he is free from all the false ego. When a person becomes free from desires, nispara, nirmamo and nirahankara, he can attain the real peace. He can attain the real peace. So let us understand how one can become free from nispara, means free from all the desires, how one can become nirmamo and one can attain the stage of nirahankara. How one can do that? Let us understand. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, therefore everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own satisfaction, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Desire for the satisfaction of Krishna is really desirelessness. It is not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless. But he does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna, Ishavasyam idam sarvam, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is the part and parcel of Krishna in his spiritual identity. And therefore, the eternal position of the living entity is never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. So, it's a basic principle of real peace. What is that basic principle? These three things: free from desires, free from the sense of proprietorship, and free from the false ego. So now, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 5th chapter, we have to connect this with the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So what Krishna is saying there, Krishna says, Bhaktaram yagna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam shantim mam gachati. That Krishna is the Bhokta. We have to understand three things against these three things. Against these three things, we have to understand three principles. What are those principles? First is Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. He is the supreme proprietor. Everything belongs to him. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. Everything belongs to him. Second thing. Third thing, he is the well-wisher and friend of all the living entities. Krishna is the well-wisher and friend of all the living entities. So, when we know Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and he is the supreme proprietor of everything, everything belongs to him, even our body belongs to him, has been given by Krishna. The elements which are used to develop this body is given by Krishna. So everything has been given by Krishna. Just like a government officer, he gets various resources. For what purpose? To serve the government, to utilize those resources in the service of the government. And as a result, he also gets a nice salary for his own enjoyment. Same way, when we serve Krishna, when we engage ourselves in Krishna service, we automatically feel pleasure. We automatically experience that peace and happiness. So real desire, Prabhupada says, real desire is what? Real desire, because living entity cannot be free from the desires. That is not possible. That is the natural propensity of the living entity to make desires. But now, the quality of desires is in our hand. What kind of desires we get? And we get desires based on the consciousness. What kind of consciousness, Chetna, we are having? Based on that, we get the desires. So, one can test himself how advanced he is just simply by observing what kind of desires he is getting. What kind of desires he is getting. One can understand how advanced I am, how much advancement I have made, you can understand simply by observing his desires. Devotees, they also get desires. But what desires they get? They get a desires just like Kartik Maas is going on. Let me chant more rounds of Hare Krishna mantra. Let me read more about Krishna. Let me go to Vrindavan Dham. Let me, if they want to eat something, let me prepare something nice, palatable dish for Krishna and let me offer it to Krishna. Let me sing glories of Krishna. Let me sing some special prayers for glorification of Krishna. Let me serve Krishna's devotees. Or if they have money, whatever money they get, let me engage in preaching Krishna consciousness. Let me engage this in constructing the temple of the Lord. Let me engage this money in distributing books, distributing prasadam. All these kinds of desires devotees get. How I can give Krishna consciousness to this person, that person. How I can, do some welfare activity. What is the highest welfare activity? How I can give Krishna Bhakti? How I can introduce him to Krishna Bhakti? This is what devotees, they think, they desire. They desire to perform more austerities. Oh, let me go and perform more austerities. Let me get up early in the morning. Let me chant, finish my chanting in the morning. So such desires devotees get. Even when they get desire, they get all such desires. So by quality of desires, we can understand what kind of consciousness we are having. Now, last verse of this chapter. One more point Prabhupada says, this inanimate objects, non-moving objects, dead objects does not make desire. Only living beings, they have this propensity to make desires. So when they serve Krishna, they get free from all kinds of material desires. That is the solution, to get free from material desires. How one can get free from material desires? By serving Krishna. That is the solution. So desires are our constant companion. We get a lot of desires. And at the end, here also Prabhupada mentions that Arjuna, he was not at all willing to fight. Because till that time he was thinking this war is for just piece of land, for kingdom. But when he understood that he belongs to Krishna, he is part and parcel of Krishna, he belongs to Krishna, and it is his duty to serve Krishna. And Krishna wanted this war for what purpose? To establish dharma, to establish religious principle. He immediately agreed. Karishye vachanam tava. Whatever you say, I will follow. Krishna was telling, Yatha ichchasi tatha kuru. Whatever you desire, whatever you want, you do. But Krishna says, Arjuna says, whatever you will say, I will do. Karishya vachanam tava. Whatever you will tell me, I will follow that thing simply. So devotees are like that. So we'll read the next verse. Esha brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati sthiti vasyam antakalepi brahma nirvanam rachati. So till here, Krishna explained those symptoms of sthita prajna, and now here Krishna is making conclusion. What is the conclusion? That is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. Being so situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of Godhead. At a time of death, such person who has that kind of consciousness, godly consciousness, divine consciousness, is not at all bewildered by the material reactions, not at all bewildered. And at the time of death, he simply entered into the kingdom of Godhead. He simply goes back to Godhead. So here we read the purport. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Katwanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life. But Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of Godhead and devotional service of the Lord, since both of them are on the absolute plane. To be engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, they are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, they are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman, and one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of Godhead. A very nice thing Prabhupada has mentioned here. One who is situated in Krishna consciousness has already entered into the kingdom of Godhead, is already liberated. One who is having Krishna Mati, is conscious of Krishna, is already liberated from material bondage of life. Read further. Brahman is just opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmani Sthiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as the liberated stage. Therefore, Brahmani Sthiti is liberated from material bondage. Liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. So, we'll understand here a little bit. Like Katwanga Muni, this Katwanga Maharaj, he comes in the lineage of Surya Vamsha, and he was very powerful. And those days, he was even invited by the Devatas, demigods, to fight with the Asuras, to support them in the fighting with the Asuras. So after the war was over, these demigods, Devatas, they won the war. They thanked Katwanga Muni and they asked Katwanga Muni, is there anything they can do or any benediction they can give to Katwanga Muni Maharaj? So this Katwanga Maharaj, he was very devoted, saintly king. So he asked one question. When I will die, how much time I have? So these demigods, Devatas, they told, you have only one muhurta. One muhurta is of 48 minutes. You have only that much time, and after that you have to die. So immediately he left everything and he simply meditated upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Entire life he was following the path of Dharma. It became very simple or easy. Sulabha, it becomes very easy for him to meditate at the time of death. Otherwise, sometimes people, even we also think, once I was thinking, oh, what? Now we can do all these activities. materialistic activities. At the time of death, we have to remember Lord. So that time I will remember and I will go back to Godhead. No, it is not at all easy. When we practice now, current time, it becomes easy to remember Krishna at time of death. Because at time of death, only our subconscious mind will work. Our subconscious, as per science also, our subconscious mind works, not the conscious mind. Subconscious mind works means whatever we have done throughout our life, all those memories will come in front of us. All this memory we will recalling will come in front of us. So suppose we entire life we have engaged in materialistic activities, so there will be no remembrance of the Lord. There will be no remembrance of Krishna. So at the time of death, will not be able to remember Krishna. Whereas a person who has practiced throughout his life dharma, who has served Krishna, so even though at the time of death he is not able to remember Krishna, Krishna says, I will give him remembrance by which he can come to me. Krishna gives that assurance. If he has served entire life dedicatedly, he has served Krishna, Krishna says, I will give him a remembrance by which he can come to me. That's why Prahlad Maharaj says, from Komara Avastha, from the at age of 5 itself, one should be engaged in Krishna's service. How? By eating the prasadam, by hearing about Krishna, by chanting Krishna's holy name, by going to holy places, Vrindavan Dham. All such way, one can engage himself in Krishna's bhakti, Krishna's consciousness, and attain that Krishna mati, attain that Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, one person who is engaged in sense gratification, for him it is not at all possible to remember Krishna at the time of death. So, by this, we have completed the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the biggest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It comprises of 72 verses and it includes all three: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So now further Arjuna will ask a lot of questions, more clearance about Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, and further Krishna will be explaining all these things in detail about Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and we will see how each verse of this section, this chapter 2, we can connect with the another chapters. These are like connecting dots. Verses of second chapter are like connecting dots. We can connect with the next various chapters and understand more in detail. Okay, so anyone has any questions or anything to share or ask? Yes, any questions?
প্রভুজি সাংখ্য সমং জ্ঞান নেই, যোগ সমং বল নেই।
Yes, Sankhya Yoga comes in this Jnana Yoga.
Yes. আত্মজ্ঞান একটা
Yes, Atma Jnana comes in Jnana Yoga. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I had a question when we were reading verse number 70, that can we have spiritual desires? But I think it was answered in verse number 71. And it was beautifully answered, wherein it was said that for himself there was no desire to fight for Arjuna, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does have to change the quality of the desire. So like a devotee can have spiritual desires, and that is good.
Yes. A devotee uh, desires, a devotee simply accepts the desires of his spiritual master and desires of Krishna. When he accepts the desire of Krishna and his spiritual master, he is always safe. And even though if he get desires, what kind of desires he will get? His desires will be aligned with the desires of his spiritual master. It means he is properly trained. He has been properly trained. That's how he is able to get such desires. Just like Prabhupada. Prabhupada, his spiritual master told him that you should go to Western countries and give this message of Bhagavad Gita, give this holy message of Bhagavad Gita to the English speaking people. Right? But Prabhupada, he tried a lot. At least 30-40 years he tried in the India itself. None of the people, they were taking interest. To English speaking people in India also he tried a lot. None of them was taking interest. Then he accepted his spiritual master desires as his life and soul, and he went to Western countries and preached this message. And now we see how entire world is blessed by this holy message of Bhagavad Gita. So when we accept the desires of Krishna and Prabhupada, our spiritual master, we are always in safe position. And also, if we get desires also, we can always refer or always check with our authorities, always check with devotees whether this kind of desires I am getting, whether it is okay or not. We can always verify and check these desires. When we verify and check these desires, whether these desires are proper or not, we are always safe. So even devotees, they get desires like, oh, I want to do this thing for Krishna, that thing for Krishna. Whatever such desires they get, Krishna also empowers them to fulfill those desires. Krishna empowers and fulfill their desires.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Any other questions or anything? One more important thing, how to understand what are the desires of the spiritual master Prabhupada and Krishna. How one can understand? Because once we understand, then only we can align ourselves with their desires. But how to understand? Anyone would like to guess?
Whatever is mentioned in his books, Prabhuji, by way of instructions,
Krishna
like four regulative
consciousness.
principles, chanting, like that.
Any other question? Oh, any other guess?
If we follow the instruction of spiritual masters, we will develop in all respects his instruction, and ultimately we will reach in our goal.
Okay.
It is because in chapter 4, Lord Krishna told to Arjun, तद्विद्धि प्रणिपन्न परितोषण सेवत, तो हमें वो उसमें जो स्पिरिचुअल मास्टर है उन्हीं से ही हमें ये शिक्षा लाभ करना चाहिए, तत्वदर्शिनी के पास। तद्विद्धि प्रणिपन्न परितोषण उपदख्यन्ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनः तत्वदर्शिनः।
Okay. Yes. Any other?
Authorized guru, spiritual master, he is the only person we can learn from him.
Okay. Yes. Any other guesses? Anyone has?
We have to continuously read and interact with the devotees.
Yes, correct. So this is what we have to do practically, is to read Krishna's instruction, to read Prabhupada's books, to hear Prabhupada and to hear Krishna's instruction and to hear about Krishna. by reading Bhagavad Gita, by reading Krishna book, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, all these different books of Prabhupada, all these different books about Krishna, when we read, we can actually understand the desires of a spiritual master and desire of Krishna. And when we understand these desires, we can gradually align ourselves with their desires and we can make a spiritual advancement very easily. So all these books Prabhupada has written for that purpose only. So more than 70 books Prabhupada wrote so that we can take advantage of these books, we can read these books and make our spiritual advancement. So when we read these books, what happened? We understand their desires and we understand what is good and what is bad. And like that, we can navigate, we can make a spiritual advancement in our life. Okay, so anyone has any question or anything to ask? Okay, so we'll end here. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
Jai.
Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Krishna